Hello and welcome everybody. Today we're talking about sports card investing part 2. This is just my opinion, not financial advice. This is all just applies to me. And there's going to be lots of people who disagree and the comments are great. And we'll talk about some of those here in a second. But first, let's review what we talked about in part 1. We talked about things to consider like inflation, things that pertain to the value of your card. Is it positional? Is your favorite player playing defense like Chase Young? Those cards generally and historically have been less expensive than, say, the premier quarterbacks, okay? So all that we talked about and we have to consider. This is for me, that I consider. And when I look at the big picture, I'm just like, lots of the individual sports cards are just not going to meet my investment requirements. And so I don't invest in individual sports cards as a general rule. And part 2, we're going to stab that and poke at it and prod it and test it, okay? Now, there were some great comments, and all comments are welcome here. My investment strategies aren't for you. That's why I tell you this is not advice, okay? So here's an example. In the last video, there was a great comment where somebody says, oh, I always sell at 2x, which is good, which is great. I know people in the stock market that do this. So let me explain how different investment strategies diverge. Okay, now this is just one example out of a billion, okay? So again, this is not advice, or don't feel like this is a dichotomy of any sort. So let's say an individual is trading on margin, or I guess in the sports card world, we would call it credit, okay? So you have a credit card and you max it out and you go buy a card. And this individual left a great comment where it's like, you sell at 2x, okay? I know people in the stock market that do that. And if you're trading on credit, that makes a lot of sense. You buy it, and in 20 days, if you can flip that for 2x your money, they're going to do that all day. Why? Because they have the margin that's accumulating interest, or their credit, which they need to pay off at the end of the month, or they get dinged with, their credit interest rates, right? And so it makes sense for that investment strategy, okay? And that's, I'm not going to say that's a bad investment strategy, but it's not my investment strategy. So to flip the page here and look at my investment strategy, if I buy something, okay, I'm not buying this on margin. I'm not buying this on credit. I'm buying this with cash. And so I buy a stock or a sports card or whatever. It 2x's in value. Let's say I do sell. Okay, so let's just use as an example. Let's say a $100 investment turns to $200. I sell. Now all of a sudden I have $100. So the cost basis is $100 and I have a $100 profit. And so I'm being taxed. What I've done is create a taxable event. So I have a cost basis, taxable event, $100 difference. I'm going to make up a number here just for ease of communicating here on the video. Let's say I'm at the 30% tax bracket. Well, out of my $100 that I made, 30% of that to the government. Everybody pay your taxes. I pay my taxes. So 30% of it's gone. And so what I was looking at was an unrealized gain of $100 with a net value of $200, which has just moved down to a total value of $170. So immediately my net value decreased by 15%. My gain decreased by 30%, and so is that good? Am I going to reinvest that money? And all of a sudden I'm looking for something else to put that money into. So it creates two problems, a taxable event and where do I put this money? Because as they say, the cliche, cash is trash, right? So for me as a long-term investor who's not trading on margin or credit, it doesn't make sense for me to 2x sell if I need the cash, or if I'm going to roll it over into another investment. Let's not explore that. Let's just say, if I have something, I'm like, I want to invest in this. I'm going to sell these assets. Sell this, I need this capital for whatever, and I'm going to go get this. And it might not be an investment. It might be a boat or a house or something, right? It can be whatever. But I'm very picky about when I sell. Because, again, the tax, if $200 unrealized, even if it doesn't go up, for a while, I still am up from if I had sold it. So long-term holds are my strategy. And remember, there's lots of different strategies. People mix and match. There's not just one way to do things. I'm not going to tell you how to do things, all right? I'm just sharing how I think and what I do. Now, so with that in mind, and like I said, great comment, and I expect there'll be lots of comments like that in here too, because there are lots of smart investors and they have their strategies, okay? So what do I invest in the sports card world? Very little, very little. So out of my total, out of all my positions, I probably have less than 2%, if 2%, in the sports card world. And out of that 2%, that's not investable. That's just my collection. And out of that, maybe 5% of that is investments. So what do I invest in? Let's dive in and talk about that. Number one, individual cards. But you said you don't invest in individual cards. As a general rule, I don't. But here's the sticker. If you can find, I have a prop here. So here is a 2008 LeBron James Topps card. He's throwing the chalk dust. You've seen him pre-game. I don't know. We used to live in the Cleveland area. He throws the chalk up, and so he puts the chalk on his hand and he throws it up in the air, and it has this like awesome. It like floats away, right? It's just iconic LeBron James. And 2008 Topps has this card, and the Kobe card is LeBron James. Anyway, so there are certain cards. Now, this is not an iconic card. I just use this as a prop. Like I said, I don't invest in individual cards, but if I were to invest, I would look for cards that are historic or iconic. Maybe another way of saying iconic is a high profile card. Does that make sense? Like Mickey Mantle, right? When I say Mickey Mantle sports card, an image pops in a lot of people's head. What about a Mike Trout Superfractor? There's an image that pops in a lot of people's head. LeBron James rookie, LeBron James RPA. Lots of people have that image burned in their head. Like, yep, I know exactly what he's talking about. Those are high profile cards. And to me, those are cards that you could invest in, not something just a common base card. You know what I mean? And this is my opinion. So this is how I see it. I don't see this PSA 9 base LeBron as an investment. Okay, this is just a fun card that I like, that I wanted. I'm like, yeah, that's LeBron. I want it. And to me, it looked beautiful. And the grade doesn't matter. I just bought the card I like. Now, to me, that's what I'd be looking for. And at some point, you may see on this channel, I might actually invest in a high-profile, iconic, words used interchangeably. Is there some redundant repetitiveness going on here? Or maybe something historic. That's just a historic card that I really like. You may see that here on this channel, but at this stage, I don't own anything like that. Nothing I have is historic. They're all like this, just like, cool, like very collectible. The other thing that I invest in, and this is the only thing that I invest in, unopened, what's the cliche? Oh, I know, sealed wax. Okay, people, but that's a $20 blaster box. Yeah, exactly. A $20 blaster box, which, in a few years could be worth $80. I like soccer, but I just don't have the time to follow all the sports. Does that make sense? Like, I like watching hockey. Like, one of my best friends growing up loved hockey, right? But my life is so busy right now. It's like I have trouble, like, squeezing in some football here and there, and I watch as much basketball and baseball as I can, which is not very much. And soccer just can't compete for my time yet. Maybe in the future it will. So for me, when I see something like this at Walmart, there were like a dozen of these, and I just grabbed one. I'm like, oh, all right, I'll buy one of these and leave it sealed. So being perfectly straightforward here, I didn't think of this as an investment when I purchased it. I thought of this as a prop, because I'm going to set up a studio at some point and I want some unopened sealed product. Sealed wax. It's such a funny term. So some sealed product in the background, right? And I want some things like soccer, and I want baseball and basketball, and I want a variety of Pokemon. I want a variety of things in the background. And so that's why I bought this, thinking I was going to buy it as a prop, not an investment. But when I get home, I'm like, oh, well, it could increase in value if I leave it sealed. So I'm going to leave it sealed, because that way I have a prop that I'm not losing money on that I can use in my videos. Anyway, that's how I think. So I do have some sealed wax. I have some late 90s baseball, some late 90s football, some basketball, and some soccer. Do I have any sealed hockey? I have some sealed hockey. So I do have some sealed product for all of the major sports. So yeah, is that a big part of my collection? No, it's a very small part of my collection, and you're going to see it in the background at some point as a backdrop. Does that make sense? As a prop. So there are some key points here before we end. With sealed product, one is generally, sealed product has a tendency historically to increase in value at not necessarily a great rate, but it can be pretty good, especially if you get in right before a huge bubble. I don't know if bubbles are a huge influx of interest and demand. Let's say it like that. That way you can make money real quick, right? Like people who just go buy things on credit, go sell them on eBay, make good profits. That's a good little side gig right there. It's a side hustle where you're, using arbitrage. I don't want to get too in depth with investor. You're buying at one market price and you're selling at a higher market price, and you can do that all day, right? Until that arbitrage is leveled out, at which point that part-time gig that you have is kind of flatlined and there's not much to do there. So a long-term hold, these things can increase at, depending on what product it is, at certain rates which can beat inflation or can be pretty near inflation at least. So not a terrible investment, but for the most part, long-term, in my experience, over the last 40 years, it hasn't been like, holding one sealed box is gonna, you're not gonna trade one sealed box into a Bugatti, whatever. And so it's interesting and it can do very well. Now, the other thing to consider, like I said, what's actually in the box can make a little difference. For example, if the high profile cards, like let's say that there's a basketball product where there's a LaMelo redemption card, which expires in 2 years. After 2 years, I think that box is going to see a little tick down, right? It's like, oh, well, these LaMelo redemptions are no longer valid. And so you're never going to get an RPA out of this product. Of the two, let's say, I don't know. I don't know if there is such a thing, but let's say that there's 2 or 3 of the top prospects who don't have an auto in the package and they're only redemptions. At that point, I imagine if that represents 20% of the value or even 50% of the lottery cards that you're looking for, that box might take a hit in value. But I still think in the long run it's going to increase in value. Does that make sense? Thinking about things, I don't know if National Treasures had redemptions. I know Immaculate has redemptions, and various other high-profile sets have redemptions, especially of LaMelo autographs. I'm making this video in 2021, and LaMelo Ball was a rookie this last year, over the last NBA season, which just ended a few months ago, 2020, 2021. And he didn't sign until towards the end of the year, so there are lots of products that have redemptions. And so it's just something to consider. But like I said, in the long term, I'm not sure what percentage of a difference it's going to make in the value of those boxes. Considering you're still going to get base rookies and short print parallels, numbered parallels of his rookies. So I imagine, you can imagine, in my mind, it would still increase in value. But if I were to look at an opportune moment, it would probably be after those expire and the market adjusts. If it adjusts, I'm not sure it will. The funny thing about stuff like that is lots of times you'll see the market pre-adjust to knowing that, oh no, in 6 months, oh, in a year, in 6 months, these redemptions are going to be worthless. And so you might see that decline kind of hit early. So kind of just one of those wait and see what happens. So boxes are interesting to me as an investment, but not so interesting that I'm dropping everything I'm doing and just go investing all my investment fund, my funds which I use for investment into sealed wax. So just some thoughts I have, and that's how I think. So for me, the two things in the sports card world, but we're not talking about stocks, okay? Oh, you can go buy some stock. Iconic or historic cards, preferably graded, and sealed wax. Again, being selective about exactly what you're getting and when you're getting it and the price and all of that, and make sure that it meets, I can say but I'm talking about my personal investment needs. And can I put this in the background of my videos and use it as a prop? It looks good. MLS. I was in Atlanta when Atlanta United won the MLS. Yes! Atlanta United. All right. Now, if there are any comments or questions, leave them in the comments below. Rage, rant, let us know everything. Pour out your secrets in the comments below if you want. I'd love to hear that. I love the comments that we got in the last video. All of it's welcome here. Thanks everybody for watching. You guys know the routine. Like, subscribe, thumbs down if you want, comment, and I'll see you in the next one.